Hello, Gavin Thomas here, Assistant Head Teacher and Raising Standards Lead at Penrice Academy, and here today to talk to parents and carers of those in Year 10 about the exam experience which is taking place next week. So Mrs. Rizell wrote to you at the start of the half term and said one of the main focus of Year 10 across this half term would be these exams which are taking place next week. And during tutor time over the last few weeks, all of Year 10 have been looking at how we can start to prepare for this exam experience. So Mr. Warrer started off by taking an assembly and talking about this idea of preparation. So what we're talking about, two things here. We're talking about sitting some practice exams next week, but we're talking long term as well about preparing for those final exams at the end of Year 11. And the message that Mr. Warrer got across was the idea that quite often preparing, whether it be cooking as in this example, or whether it be sports teams, a dance company, the preparation time is quite often a lot longer and more substantial than the actual event. And so that is with exams. The actual preparing for the exams, it's a long-term process and something we're not going to master overnight, which is why we start this process now in Year 10, so that by the time we get to the end of Year 11, we are experts in it. And we talk about this idea of being good at exams isn't about taking the exam, it's about preparing for the exam. It's a message we give every year to our students. It's that focus on preparation for the exam, which is key. Likewise, it's also beneficial to experience the context of sitting exams. So it's slightly different to sitting in your classroom and doing the assessment, in the sense that there's more students if you're in the sports hall. Some students are also in alternative venues. So it's important that part of this process is giving them the opportunity to experience what it's like to take an assessment in those different situations. And that is the main point of these 3 assessments that we're doing next week. So students have been given a small exam timetable saying that on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday next week they are sitting a maths, science and English assessment. We've talked them through what that looks like. So in maths, they're doing a walking talking mock this week. So in class, their teacher's going through a very similar paper, same questions but different numbers, so they're familiar with that paper. In science, they're looking at work they've done recently in physics, and they have an equation sheet which they can use to support them in the exam. And then in English, they're looking at recently covered poems in a literature paper, and we've given them some support with that, looking at various quotes and various ways to revise. But the key messages alongside this are really around these key points here, that these exams are taking place in the venues where they will sit ultimately their final exams. However, these exams don't go towards anything. They're nothing to worry about at all. They don't affect any grades. The idea is just simply to have an experience about what it's like to do an exam in that environment. So, and that's really important to stress. That is the point of these exams. And to finish off, I want to just have a quick look at what students have been looking at in terms of revision. So we've started with this point here, what we call the core 4. So flashcards, mind maps, self-quizzing and brain dumps. Just 4 techniques that can be used to support a child's revision. Your child will have some flashcards. They will have some English quote flashcards which are like fill in the blank for certain quotes that they can use in these assessments. That's something you can look at home and help support with quizzing them on those. And over the coming weeks, we'll be going through each of these in detail so that students build up their skills in revising. This leads on to the PPEs, which are coming up at the end of the year, so a main set of practice exams, and we are inviting parents in April to talk about those, talk about what parents can do to support their child to help prepare, and all the logistics around that exam experience. But for now, that's some brief information about the exam experience which is happening next week. As ever, if you have any questions or queries about this, please don't hesitate to get in contact either with myself, with Mrs. Rizell as head of year, or your child's tutor, or indeed their English, science or maths teacher if you have any subject specific questions. Thank you for listening.